Well, when you go to these lectures, you'll find an opening that's better suited for you. Yeah. All right, is it started? Good. All right, welcome everybody to our first lecture. We're going to be going over the King's Indian defense, and for the first half, I'll be explaining why it's the greatest opening that's ever been invented, and then Derek will proceed to destroy my opening and make it look like it's the worst opening ever invented, but that's just true. Just so I can tailor the lecture to your guys' abilities, can you raise your hand if you are 1200 or below? Okay. And then between 1200 and 1800, and then above 1800. So we have players at all levels, and that's great because King's Indian defense is a great opening for all levels. It teaches you planning, it teaches you strategy, positional play, and you can play it at from a beginner to advanced. It's not an unsound opening. It's a response to d4. G6, knight d3, and the key move to signify you're going to the King's Indian is d7. Because in this position, black can also elect to play d5, but that's the Grunfeld. We're not talking about that. And then d6 to prevent d5. And this is the starting position of the King's Indian defense. White has so many ways to play against the King's Indian defense that I could do 100 lectures in a row and not cover all of the options. But the great thing is that if you know the key ideas and themes, then you can get the same sort of game plan every single game. And in this position, black has two main moves. Because by not putting a pawn in the center immediately, black is cramped versus white, who has 3 pawns in the center. But the King's Indian defense is a hyper-modern opening, which means that we're going to strike back at the center once we're ready. And because of that, the two main moves here are e5 and c5. And c5 is more of a Benoni type structure, which is not in the spirit of the King's Indian defense, but against certain white options, it's the best move. But here we're going to go for e5. And at first glance, this looks like it drops a pawn because there's only one defender and there's 2 attackers. Looks like white's won a pawn here, but there's a very important tactic here that can win the pawn back. So does anybody know how black should respond to it? 94, unleashing the attack on this knight. Right? And at this point, back, this is completely even, so black has no issues here. So because of this tactic, white does not have to prepare e5 here with knight c6 or knight c7. Those are moves, but you can play e5 right away, so we're going to do that. So this is the main line, knight c6, increasing the pressure on d4, knight e7. And we're going to stop here. White has 3 main moves, knight e1, knight e2, and d4. And the reason that these are all the 3 main moves is the pawn structure is well defined now. So the black pawn structure is pointing towards the king side. So black's going to try and get this f5 break in and attack over here, versus white, who's going to try and storm on the king side. And you might ask why black would play such a cramped opening after, what, like 10 moves. Black's played e5, he's shut in this dark squared bishop. He has virtually no space, but white looks like he's doing incredibly well. But black is sacrificing like the short-term gains for a long-term kingside attack, and we'll see how he does that. White plays knight e1. The reason this is a move is it's getting in the way of the f pawn, because white is anticipating black's with knight e3. Plays f5 here. And if white does not play f3 right now, then black might play f4 himself and take the bishop away from protecting the king side. So white looks to play f3 here. And now we see that the pawn structure is even further off. So black is going to push g4 through at all costs versus white is going to push through c5 at all costs. And whoever gets there first is going to win. e3, adding support to c5. And at this point, black cannot prevent c5 any longer. If black tries to play a few moves like d6, for example, it's only going to make things worse because it's just going to crack the queen side open even more. And black cannot afford to spend any time protecting the queen side because it's going to be completely destroyed. its forces to the king side. Now, a very key move in the king's Indian defense that you have to remember if you're going to play this variation is rook f7. And it looks mysterious, but what it's doing is anticipating this opening and penetration along the c file. This is white's whole idea is to get to the c7 square. But this rook on f7 is adding some support to the square and also making room for this bishop. So d6 has more support, c7 has more support, and maybe in the future this rook can come out. And now queen d2. Queen d2 might be an inaccuracy. It's probably better for white to get something started with knight b5 or b4, a4 immediately. Because queen d2 allows g4. And if g4 is possible, then we need to play as black immediately. Because the queen that was on d1 was lending support to g4 right here. But as soon as it steps away, we can play g4. Right? And this is the key pawn sacrifice. If I had to ask what is the most important piece for black's attack in the black army, it's going to be this bishop on c8, which looks ridiculous. This looks like black's worst piece. But if we can imagine a construction where black plays g3 and white plays h3, if black does not have this layer sacrifice in h3 to destroy the king side, then this whole setup will not work. g3. You have a question? Not allow g4. I would probably consider something like knight b5 or maybe a4, a5, and knight b5 to try and get to these squares. Because this bishop on f2 is helping target a7, so if white can get knight to b5, then it can increase pressure here. And if you can imagine there's a knight on b5 and a bishop on f2 attacking a7, then if white tries to kick out this piece with a6, then there might be some sort of tricks here. Or if there's already pawn a5 and bishop b6, white just has to get something started on the queen side. Queen 2 did not allow that, or did not do anything for it. So g4, g3 is the key pawn sacrifice that we'll see now in the next game as well. Black has given up the pawn, but can you guys tell me what is black getting in return for this pawn? If you guys have any ideas, you can just shout them out. Yeah, right. So it's kind of weakening the dark squares here. And black is going to start exploiting these dark square holes. With the knight, the bishop's going to come in. And at this point, white is panicking. Knight b1 doesn't really do anything. But it's already bad for white. And this is all made available by the g3 pawn break, getting rid of this f4 pawn and opening up this diagonal. Queen g5, bringing in all the last pieces. And at this point, right here, black sees that white wants to get rid of this bishop because this bishop's taking away the square from the king. So white just move this rook out of this diagonal so that the white knight can move, and he's trying to go to c4 so that he can trade away this dark square bishop, which is a key attack. So he's taking time out of the attack. White tries to at black, but he doesn't allow it. Black is setting up some nasty one square. And he breaks through. Remember that dark square bishop I was talking about earlier? It's usually the key piece that breaks through on the king side. So now you guys all try to figure out what happens if white takes this bishop. Yeah. One check. So these are the type of games that you don't get when you play the touch button. Queen G1 check. So obviously white cannot take the bishop, but if white cannot take this bishop, then he's doomed. He's gonna get destroyed right now. So we break through. Now this queen is trapped because anyone know what happens to queen f1 right now? Yeah, knight g3, right? Because queen g1, then there's knight g3 check, which works the king queen. So we messing him up. And at this point, it's just carnage. The knight's coming in, bishop's coming in. And white played rook g5. It might seem premature. He has what, a rook and a knight for a queen here, but I, as black, would probably play something like rook g8, trading this rook. I don't see any defense against this. Right. So let's quickly go through the plans for the king's in defense if we're going to play this variation. So we play e5 immediately because this does not lose a pawn because of this trick. Because people that watched in, maybe we'll just show. We want to get this pawn first. We move the knight out of the way. And then once we've locked down, we have to get the next pawn break through. So now we're going to do everything we can to get that. Bring the knights over. And then this key maneuver, rook f7, bishop f8, to protect the d6 and c7 squares. So the rook defends c7, the bishop defends d6. And then as soon as g4 is possible, we push through. And then if g3 is possible, we push through. It doesn't matter if we sacrifice the pawn. And then that allows all the dark square play. And we'll see a very similar pattern in the next game. This is the starting position. e5 is our king's in knight d6. Same variation as in the last game. We move the knight out of the way. It doesn't matter that we're blocking this bishop or this queen because the knight's going to go to f6 later. And what do we do when we push f4? We have to try and get the g4. And white is playing much better this game because he's trying to get through c5 as fast as possible, which is the key break that white needs. This is a Pickett versus Gary Kasparov. Gary Kasparov. In defense because it was akin to his playstyle. He was a great fighter. So anyone remember the key maneuver that you need in King's Union to make sure that this pawn doesn't get overwhelmed. Right, rook f7. And then bishop d8. So now if this piece is superb. And here we would like to go g4 as fast as possible. So one idea is to go h5 and then push g4. But white is quick with knight d5. And this is the whole queenside counterplay that we were worried about. Looks like a7 is under attack right now. And if we move this pawn out of the way, this bishop's coming in. And queen moves, the knight's coming in. If the knight ever lands on e6, then you know it's black that you need something for me. Because even if it is absolutely not worth it, because now you have no queenside attack prospects whatsoever. Because white's going to play h3 and you're never because you don't have that bishop sacrifice. And now white has all the time he needs to get something going on the queenside. So instead of h5, Derek Kasparov plays bishop d7. Seeing all that. So now if white plays knight d5 right now, then because this knight used to protect the 4 square. So moves away. What do we know in King's in defense? As soon as g4 is possible, we play it because white is small and this pawn is weak. F3 might be possible later, but in general, like white wants to keep this pawn chain intact, so before we push through right away. C7, and yeah, this shows Gary how genius of the play. Anyway. This was the same pawn sacrifice. This pawn sacrifice on the last game, but in this game, it's even more full rook on a8. And we don't even take this bishop now, because if we take the bishop, then there's no more attack, and then white's going to storm through the queen side. H5. Why did you play king h1? Because when this knight moves out of the way, this queen is opened up, so the queen comes to h4. And if the queen lands to h4 and white wants to push h3, then what's that key exactly we're talking about? It's this. So let's say white tries to save his knight. Right and checkmate. So white plays king h1. So then white plays queen h4 now. Let's take the bishop first. Three check. Knight d3 check is the move. In every position, when it gets this close to the mating attack, you have to look at every single check, and knight d3 check pushes through because white, you guys know what happens with white. Yeah, here and can't stop it. You're not even going to take the rook. So, one, queen takes, and in this position, I think Gary is down an extreme. If the knight's taken, right? It's really complicated. Two pieces for the rook. And I don't know if you guys were looking at the moves earlier, but there's one move in this move. Okay, the crazy thing about this position is we have time to take the knight because white still does not have this because here there's only one. And if you saw the move on the side, then don't say anything. But we have this. Like queen d8 or something, and then coming back. That we were saying. Queen d8. It can come to h4, but then after the queen comes to h4, what are you doing then? Right? Because white doesn't have to play h3. So I'm going to give you guys something that has to do with this diagonal. Yeah. E6. White has no way to defend against queen 7. Right, queen d3, yes, for something. 7. Let's try the last move of this game. If white takes this knight, then he's going to lose the rook. Bishop takes b5, queen takes b5, and then knight e2. E2, you mean? Be careful because then the queen on b5 is still protecting e2. Yeah. What is it? Yeah, that is one. And white resigns because white here, black is up a full piece. And you guys might say, oh, white is only down one piece, but against world champion. But yeah, knight h1 is this is the only game that I know where knight h1 is the finish. But remember the key themes. You don't need to know all the opening theory. If you know the ideas, then you can play this opening. Remember, we push through f5. As soon as white reinforces center, we push through. We're trying to get g4 in, so we have to open up the bishop and bring the knight in. maneuver that we know, rook f7 and bishop f8 to protect these key squares from the knight. And then we have to look for white's counterplay, and if this is a long game, we see that knight d5 is coming to attack this pawn, so we can play bishop d7 so that, and then because of there's but it's the same ideas in every game, yeah. a6 right here. I think this bishop d6. Or maybe not even the bishop, maybe the knight can come to b6. And even like knight e4, and it's unstoppable for white to take this bishop. So even if you go here, because white's gonna play h3, and there's no sacrifice. So yeah, that's what I would say. Go to the next game. Indian pawn advance. In this game, white's only gonna play knight e2 instead of knight e1. It's white thinks that maybe in the future, when this pawn goes to c5, then knight c4 will put no pressure on the piece. With this pawn. But that's the subtle difference. And one question you might have is, what if you don't get the ideal setup? Like, what if white doesn't play f3 here and allow you to push f4? Because that's what happens then. What if white doesn't play f3 here? Well, the thing is that white is going to play f3 if he knows what he's trying to get, because f3 is the best move, since white is trying to buy time for his queenside attack. But he doesn't have time to make all of these moves if the center crumbles, because then white's going to have all the active pieces. So if white plays in a4 here to just ignore what's going on here, and you can center. This is not going to be very impressive if the center is not locked. But that's white plays f3. And what's that key maneuver? That key move? It gets off of this bishop's diagonal for a pawn. In this game, white doesn't bring the bishop to f2. He brings it to a3. And now, this is the other idea that black has to delay white's attack. Usually we play bishop f8 to hold on. But if black plays bishop f8 here, then white crashes through first because he made that b4 move so fast, and b6. And this black queen side is going to be absolutely good. I don't know what you guys have. Like, what would you do if you saw this move when you were black? Which pawn would you pick? I would think this. Oh, maybe like this. This b6 pawn's going to fall, and then this pawn's going to fall later. But this is not what black wants, obviously. You don't have anything on the king side yet, and white's already gone to the queen side. So bishop f8 here doesn't work. So the alternative is to take. Keep going, because now b6 is not possible, right? Because we have two pawns here. So we have more time to get our king side. So we obviously want to get g4 in, and b4 is not possible now, so h5. So this is the type of game that you're going to get if you go through this opening. Like, it's one move decides the whole game. Like, white's about to crash your game. Like, this is the third game in a row that we've seen that black goes for these b3 attempts, because it rips open the dark squares. It doesn't matter what you have to give up to get. So what would you guys play? You guys have any ideas? white can play this move, then black is toast. Takes h3. And you obviously want to get the queen to h4, so maybe white up. Or maybe queen b7. That looks this looks pretty good for black. And then right check. So this bishop that has not moved the entire game, which is has looks like it has absolutely nothing to do with this king's attack, is the key piece in the king's defense. So one thing that you have to remember is that you can never give this piece up if you are trying to play on the king side. Because this is the king side. So we can play h3. And one thing that we have to, one question that the black player always has is how does he keep the attack going? Because we don't want to take this, because then there's no way to make any more progress. Because white's not going to take us on by system. There's no way to fix it. So black has an idea. White's right here, but this knight move and wait for this queen. So we're looking at h2 right now. Bishop drops back, and now black plays bishop h2. How many of you guys want to take that bishop? F2? Well, the most critical move here is pawn takes bishop, right? So that's the first move you should look at. So what I think maybe okay, this looks really critical. So we take first, then take here, then g2. So anyways, look at this only move. And black has won in exchange, but it's still very complicated. Like this one's attacking. But if you take that bishop, then you get to this position, and I have no idea what's going on. But maybe white should have gone for this. Like he's down in exchange, but all of black's pieces are right here, and this pawn marching through. Maybe white could play on the weak square center. So it's still a game. Like I have no idea what the evaluation of this position is. But white does have to give up the rook. But maybe white didn't want to give up the rook, so instead he doesn't. He's trying to break through in this thing. But now here is the actually black has a winning combination here. And it is very nice as you can find it, so I'll give you guys some time. Yeah. Bishop g2 is, remember we gotta look at every check, every capture. So bishop g2, king takes, queen h3 check, king takes, g5 check, king g2, h4 check. Yeah. Have you seen this game before? Oh, you talking history? That's very impressive. But yeah, let's look at this. Takes, and then star move to the game is queen h2. Now, I don't know any London system game where white sacrifices a queen on an empty square, but in this open you can get it. And if black retreats or white retreats, then you have to do it. So white is not here. Games like these are what inspire you to play this opening. There's going to be a lot of games where you don't have this move, and then white's just going to make queen. But we don't look at those games. We only look at the games where we play queen h3, right? Yeah, exactly. And now I'll show you. I'll finish off with a Fischer game. here, black plays a provocative move. Obviously, the main move here is d6 because it prevents move e5, right? And this fork on f2. And but what happens if you pass the right away? Do we even need to prevent e5? So how many of you players right now will play e5? Right? So let's see what happens in this game. e5. So who would take white here and who would take black? So raise your hand if you would rather have the white pieces here. And then raise your hand if you'd rather have the black pieces. So one thing that you're going to learn by playing this opening is how to play with a lack of space and how to play against a huge center, because white is spending all of his time advancing pawns and pushing them forward, but his king is on e1 and he has no pieces out. Black also doesn't have any pieces out, but his position is like a spring. Like he has all of these pieces that are ready to attack the center, and we'll see how quickly this center comes under fire. So obviously, if we're black here, we cannot let white get away with this center. So how can we try and play that? We need moves that attack the center. Yeah. e6. Now we're putting pressure on e5. And we need more moves to attack the center. Yeah. c5. And there's already a lot of tension here. It's not looking as good as it did 2 moves ago. It's still a nice position for white, but it's so easy to go wrong here. Still, like already, you can't push this pawn because of e5. White takes on d6 on c5. And what would you guys play here as black? Which one? Yeah, but I heard d takes d5, and I think that gives the advantage to white. And Fischer is sacrificing a pawn here because white just took on g5 and he just well, he couldn't. But he's arguing that, let's say, what happens if white takes a pawn, right? It's a pawn. But this position, if you plug into the engine, we shouldn't look evaluate just look evaluation, but it's winning for black. Yeah, what did you say? We're going to look. No, white didn't take the game. Oh, just do this. What would you suggest? Can I have 3? 3. What did you say? Maybe bishop b4. Bishop b4 looks good here. But this center is not going to last. Black is much better here. Let's just go through this line. I'll show you guys the compensation. Black is down a pawn, but he has tremendous compensation. First of all, this king is on e1, and it's not going out of the center anytime soon. It's going to be fast. This knight king f5 pressure this bishop. This bishop has an open diagonal. White has easy moves to make, or black has easy moves to make. But it's unclear how white is going to proceed here. Like if white plays something easy, this is happening, and white is playing this bishop next. So you guys have any ideas of that type of position? I wonder if this move already works, but I wouldn't be surprised. This is a lot to take on for one pawn. Where's this bishop going to go? d2? Well, you could trade queens before, I guess. But the point is that if you're playing this opening, you shouldn't really care about the material because black has tremendous activity. White didn't want to play that position against Fischer, so he didn't. Wait, instead of taking, this is what you were talking about. What if you don't take the pawn again? So you e4 here. more pressure on the center. Remember on move 5 or 6 that nice white center that he had. It's becoming more of a liability than a strength now. Like white is spending every single move you make is trying to put it together. Queen d8, queen d1, because this black is bringing this rook soon to d8, and maybe this bishop coming to d4. So he elects to get out of the center. Push to f5. That was his idea. But this is bishop. He plays b4. This is really complicated. So what would you guys play here? There's 2 moves here, right? You pick the pawn to queen. This is not what was played, but maybe white should have gone for it. And what is the count? Black is still down a pawn, but let's play this knight e6. What this rook's coming to the center. Where do you guys want to go to queen? I like rook here. Now white can't castle. Queen d3 on this move. Queen d3. Where do you like? Oh, knight d4. And then where's the queen gonna go? So knight's gonna come here. I tried queen g4. Rook's coming here. And this sacrifice already works. And this is just a sample variation to show that maybe you can survive if you take that pawn, but you don't want to play chess like this because you spent like so many moves in the opening trying to protect the center. So he takes the bishop, and bishop plays f5 now, threatening f4. Right, working these 2 pieces, so f4 by white. Knight comes out, and let's look at the state of white center. Looks so good in the beginning, but black hit the point pressure, so fall apart. Wins the pawn back. Probably white should castle here, but then the rook takes is attacking this bishop, and then the rook's quickly doubling. Black has a better pieces. Black is more active. So if white castles here, then he is going to be worse, but maybe he can survive. But white position is too. Use all pieces. And then this is the final combination of the game. So you guys like check. Bishop takes. Pawn takes g4. Straight off the rooks. Rook takes bishop. Yeah. Take that 4. Yeah. White resigns. Well, what happens if white doesn't get queen? I think white's going to get let's say keeping this bishop, knight, attacking the bishop again. Look at these 4 pieces that white's been playing with. One maybe to check. So white resigned at 50. But yeah, that's my introduction onto why you should play crazy opening like Kings and maybe one day you'll get to play a game like this and you can put it like Okay, before you guys play this opening, I'll give you a warning. You cannot play e5 every game. You can't get your ideal setup against anything white does because you have to play chess as a two-player game. So let's say white plays bishop g5 here. If you guys play e5 here, then you're going to get her all on this file. And you're going to lose this knight because it also makes sense. So if white does not allow you to play e5, then you'll have to go for the other break talked about c5. And maybe you'll have to play a position different. But this is just an introduction, so I can't get to it. But yeah, let's let Derek show you why this opening is so. Change it to light.
Okay, so before we get started, just want to talk a little bit about sort of my general philosophy about chess and what it means to find the best move in a position. So obviously, all of us, when you go on LeadChess or chess.com, you can turn on the engine. It tells you what the best move is, right? Yes. But I would say that what the engine gives you is the most accurate move for 2 games played by. And when you're actually playing a real game of chess against another human being with time constraints and all that, the best move in the position is often not the most accurate move, not what the computer tells you. A lot of times the best move is what makes your opponent most uncomfortable or what takes them, out of what they have prepped for in the opening, for example, or something that takes them outside of like the middle game plans that so that is sort of the idea behind the variation that I'm going to recommend today. This is the main position, the main starting position of the King's Indian defense. And if you turn on the engine here, it says the best move is bishop b2. If you look at the games database of past master games from the past 40, 50 years, the top move is also bishop. But if we play bishop e2, and Nick showed a lot of great games in this variation, can somebody tell me from Nick's lecture what is the main pawn break? F5, right? F5 is what every King's Indian player wants to play. King's Indian players, they want, attack on the king side. They want to mate you. They don't care what you're going to do on the king side. But the goal of the move I'm going to recommend is just to completely change the nature of the opening so that black doesn't really get a chance to attack it. To do that, we're just going to prevent it. So on move 6 here, my recommendation is to play h3. And let's say black continues with the normal King's Indian plan, e5, e5, and let's say black plays knight d7. So basically our idea is to play g4. And this is what h3 prepared, and then the g4 pawn controls f5 along with the e4 pawn, and it just makes it extremely difficult for black to ever play f5. As we'll see in some of the games later, a lot of times black ends up having to play on the queen side. And while the computer might feel that that position is equal or okay for black, from a King's Indian player's perspective, from black's perspective, they're not what they want. Because they want to play f5, they want to attack on the king side. If you force them to do something else, again, it might not be what the computer thinks is best for you, but you're forcing them out of their comfort zone and out of what they want to play. As a result, in my opinion, they're more likely to make a mistake or a blunder. So, for example, here after G4, most common move for black is knight C5, attacking the E4 pawn. So we play C2 defending it, and then black plays A5 to prevent us from playing D4 and taking out the knight. And let's say we play bishop E3. So this is a very typical position for this variation with H3 and E4. And again, it's very difficult for black to play F5, so black will normally play C6, D5. But let's say black tries to play F5 anyways. It's not a good idea. And this is where we get our first example game. This is not actually a real game. I just made this up last night. Because no masters play F5. No actual game. If we go to this position, let's say black is play F5 anyways. They want to continue the normal King's Indian plan. Play knight F7 with the idea of playing F5. Now we play rook D1. Somebody tell me what the idea of rook. Looks like kind of a quiet move. Why are we doing this? Yeah, exactly. So when black plays F5, we trade with the G pawn, not the E pawn. And then we have this very nice file here. We can take advantage of it right away with bishop H6. Of course, the bishop is pinned. Black has to defend it somehow. After rook F7, for example, we have knight G5. And quickly here, why can't black play bishop H6? Yeah, knight E6 wins the queen. So black has to move the rook. So let's say if rook F6, then takes D7, just wins the piece. Because again, if black takes D7, then we have the same double check, and actually this time it's a double check. This is a good example of why black can't really play F5 in this variation, because we have two pawns controlling it. And along with this open file, if black ever plays F5, we're the ones attacking on the king side. If we go back to the theory, let's say black plays more reasonably, more like what the computer would recommend. They play bishop E7. The idea, obviously for us as white, we're going to castle queen side, right? Because we've already committed to G4, whatever they very much. So black's idea is eventually C6, D5, some sort of. After castles, actually the most common move here for black is D6 to support the C5 knight. And here we can just play bishop E2, finish our development. And here our plan is very simple, right? We just move the king over to move it to a safer square, rook DG1, and we just throw these pawns down the board. And a lot of times what you'll see white do is rook D1, H4, H5, trade on G6, and then bishop H6 to trade off our bishop, take the center of the black king. And then we can play queen D2 and queen E2. So that's the general idea here. And oftentimes you'll find that for black, it's very difficult to find a plan. Right? We've already established that F5 is generally not the best idea for black in these types of positions. And since we're castled on the queen side, black will generally try and attack on the queen side anyways. But if you look at the pawn breaks that black has, D5, C6, kind of hard to make anything out of that, right? If black plays C6, we can just trade, nothing really happened. And it's very difficult for black to ever play d5. So right now, black has one piece supporting the d5 square, and we have three defenders. So our attack will be much faster. Yeah. Yeah, if a4, it's a good question. A4, we can just play. Because that is a good question, because if we do allow a3, let's say we play a3, then b3, then at this point, f5 actually becomes a good move for black in a lot of positions. Because if black succeeds in playing f5, then we have to, especially if we have to trade the e pawn, then black will have the opportunity to play e4 and sometimes queen f6 and this diagonal. That's sort of a long-term thing, but that is why after a4 we play a3. Stop that. Black can get the knight in here. So from this position, we're going to look at another example game. This is a game from a tournament in Spain in 2014 between two FIDE master level players. Again, h3 and e4. So here again, black plays knight c5, attacking the pawn at e4, queen c2 to defend, bishop e7, castle, e6. This is the exact same position we were in. So in this game, black decided to try and play c6 to break open the queen side. In reality, we don't even really have to respond. I mean, black is not making really any threat. So in this game, white just played knight d2. And after c takes d5, it's important here that we play e takes d5. We want to keep this c pawn here to prevent that black from pushing a pawn break on the. So in this game, black played a4, again with the same idea, to push a3 and weaken this b2 square to this diagonal. So again, we play a3 here and after queen e7, king d1, rook f c8, rook d1, rook d1, and rook a8. Again, if you look at this position, it's a lot easier for white to play. Our plan is very simple. We just throw the h and d pawn down the board and something will happen. From black's point of view, if I from black's point of view, we flip the board. Black is trying to attack on the queen side. They really only have one queen. It's only d5. But again, if we count the pieces to see who actually controls d5, black has a bishop and a rook on d5, and we have three pieces controlling it. It's going to be very difficult for black to break through. For us, we're going to play h4, h5, d5, and we'll be breaking through. That's three moves. Black, I mean, it's going to be a lot more difficult. Black will have to try something like knight e8, knight c7, but even in this case, black is pulling a piece from the defensive. You flip the board back around. Here, white played h4. And here, black actually found a nice defensive move, which is h5. Normally, you don't want to make moves on the side of the board where your opponent's attacking. But in this case, h5 is actually a nice move. Somebody tell me why we can't just play d takes h5. Well, we would be pretty happy if black plays knight takes h5, because then we trade, and then we end this pendulum. What did you say? Yeah, exactly, bishop f5. So if we take here, then bishop f5, and we're kind of losing it. So in this position instead, white played bishop d5, taking the knight, which indirectly supports the d4 pawn. So after rook, white is not losing a rook here. So black unpinned himself, and rook d2, h5. White played a very nice move here, which is At first, it looks kind of counterintuitive. Why are we playing on the opposite side of the board when we're attacking on? But again, if you look at the position a little bit more closely, Black's only real way to attack us on the queen side is to push this b5 pawn. And by playing knight b5, White just shuts that down forever. I mean, there's like absolutely no way for Black to make progress on the queen side. Both of the rooks are just stuck looking at their own pieces. And in the meantime, we have plenty of time to do whatever. So in this position, Black saw all of this. I knew that he wasn't going to get much on the queen side. So Black decided to go for exchange sacrifice. Black played rook a5. Back for the b5 knight. I mean, this b5 knight is a monster. It just prevents everything Black can do. And we're just going to. In this game, White just ignored it. I mean, you can also move the knight back here. You don't want to allow Black to sacrifice the exchange, but probably Black will sack the exchange anyways. So White thought we'll just attack on the king side. Black sacks the exchange on b5, b3, attacking the king. So again, White just sidestep queen d3, and after the knight h5, White's just up exchange. The rest of the game is not super interesting, but I'll play through it. White sacks on g7 because after bishop d4, moves the king back to e8, then rook h1 for mate. So Black sacks the exchange back with rook e5. White found a nice end to this game. The rook e1, knight c5. White actually just played queen a8, which looks like it loses a piece at first glance. But again, rook h1, and also the top mate. You have to sack your queen or sack your rook to prevent it. So Black just resigns it. So again, in this game, we see because of this h3 plan by White in the opening, Black really had no chance to play f5 at any point. So again, you're steering the game away from what Black wants to be. Right? Black wants to play f5 and attack on the king side and checkmate. And using this h3 and g4 plan. If we go back to the main game, we'll look at another game. This sort of transposes to the same thing. This is another common way that Black plays this. a5 and a6. It sort of transposes to the same thing. Here again, an important thing is as soon as Black threatens to play f5, it's generally a good idea to play rook e1. So normally that means as soon as Black drops the knight back to d7 or e8, we want to play rook e1 to prepare just in case Black plays f5. After rook d1, knight dc5, we'll start attacking right away, and we're going to look at another example game from this series. This is a game from the Moscow Open in 2000. Again, between two FIDE master level players. And White with this h3 d4 plan. We really stop Black from playing f5. And then rook e1, right after Black moves the knight away. And in this game, White just goes straight for the attack right away, h4, h5. And then also generally, or in many games, it's a good idea for White to play knight d2 as well, because this opens up either the bishop to come out, the queen to come out, and also as Igor mentioned, if black plays a4, then we will want to stop black from pushing a3 by playing a3 ourselves. And knight d2 is just a nice move in that it defends the b3 square from black taking that over. Oh yeah, and that happened in this game. So a4, a3, black can't play knight d3 here. So here black recognizes that he can't play f5. So he understands that he needs to pivot to the queen side right away. And here we see another benefit of playing knight d2. White needs the queen on. And what we'll see in this game is, even if it looks like in this position, black is going to be successful in pushing d5. It's a lot harder for black. It's very difficult for black to break through on the queen side in practice if we play it the correct way as white. So here white just ignores it for the moment, g5. And after c takes d5, c takes d5, black could play d5, which might have been a better try. Might have been worried about knight a2, which prevents d4 from happening. So in this game, black tried to play knight d5 and what black wants here, black wants us to take twice. Black is attacking the b2 square. But if we're smart about it, generally in this variation, we can find a way to close down the queen side and prevent black from getting a stun. So here the most accurate way to play is bishop takes c5 and after takes back. Now bishop takes c5 and after d takes c5. If you just look at this position, black's attack is kind of fizzled out. It'll take black a couple moves to move the bishop back and play d5. And even in that case, it'll be difficult for black to break through. Even if we let black play bishop d7, d5, d4, we can just play knight d1. Black takes on a3, then knight takes a3. It's difficult for black to do anything. Here after d takes c5, white just castles. After rook f8, white played rook h1. Black played bishop a6 to prepare b5. I have the notation here. After f takes g6, f takes g6, white has a very nice tactic. Give you 30 seconds a minute. You have an idea of that. Rook h7, king h7, king f7. Yeah, exactly. So after rook takes h7, black can't take. So if king takes f7, we have this very nice quiet move, queen f7, and rook h1 mate. So after rook takes h7, black can't take back. And so black just played queen c7 here. And then after rook dh1, queen d7. In this game, white played queen d3, which is slightly inaccurate and caused the game to go on for longer than it should have. In this position, white can just play rook 1 h6, taking advantage of this pin here. And white is just white is threatening to play queen h1 and then take this g6 pawn. So let's say if black plays d5, we can't take on g6 right away because so queen h1 defends the rook on h7, threatens rook takes g6. Black plays queen d6, and then we have, I'm sure you guys see it. We have a very nice mate sequence. Rook takes g7, king takes. This is what white should have done in the game. But even what white did is completely winning as well. This is another example of when you play this h3 and g4 plan. If it goes correctly, you'll prevent black from playing f5 at all. You'll force them to play on the queen side, where typically a King's Indian defense player will not be as familiar with queen side plan and these sorts of positions. You'll force them out of their comfort zone. They won't be as aware of what to do in that position, and you'll have a pretty straightforward attack on it. 7-10 already, so I think I'm going to skip one of the lines. There is a critical line if black plays knight h5, but this one is kind of complicated, so we're going to skip that. And actually, I'll show you one of my games from this variation. This is a game I played against David Levine in the Washington State Championship last year. For those that don't know, I'm from Seattle. I play the ready actually. But it transposes to this variation. So I played h3 here, e5, d5. He went for this a5, knight a6, 5 line. Then I played g4. Again, preventing f5 at any point in the future. Knight c5 attacks e4, so again queen c2. And here you play queen e7, e2, c6, knight c7. Here I played knight c4, which in hindsight is probably not a very accurate move because it makes it easier for black to play d5 in the future because I'm cutting off. I wanted to play, my idea was to play knight d6 and trade off this light square bishop, so it would be harder for him. But he played rook a6, which prevents me from playing knight d6 and also threatens d5 next move. So I have to move the knight back. We repeated 2 moves, and I moved it back to e2. He moved it back to a8. We have the same position. Here I play knight d3, and again the idea is if black takes, then let's say black makes a move, I'm going to play a4 next move, and black is never going to play d5, and I can castle queen side safely, move my rook to d1, and attack. So he knew better than to take. He played knight a4, which is trying to get me to trade this knight so he can open up the c file. Here I threw in an intermediate move d5 to try and get him to move his knight back to e8, which would kind of solidify a lot of his pieces. He didn't want to do that, so he actually made it inaccurate, which again is sort of my point, right? If you get into this, if you play this variation, you'll get into these positions where in theory you'll have played more games in these sorts of positions than your opponent. Because most King's Indian players, again, they're going to get the sorts of positions that Nick showed you, where white attacks on the queen side, black attacks on the queen side, and they're very used to that sort of double-edged tactical position. When you get into this sort of position where they have to attack on the other side of the they will make a lot more. They have less experience in those positions. They won't know what to do as well as if you have played them. So here my opponent made a mistake. He played knight h5, which allows me to just take, and this pawn is weak, and at some point I will come and collect. Actually, I played queen e2 right away. Played rook at c8, played rook c1 to protect the c3 pawn. And d5, now I'm just rook c4, I played knight d2 to try and kick the rook out. After rook e4, I played rook c2 to protect the h2 pawn. Castles. And here black played f5, which is actually not a bad move because I castled on the king side. So if I take, or if I did take in the game, if I take and open up the g file, it's a double open g file, so it's equally dangerous for both. And this is another And in this situation, it was better for me to castle queen side or king side than queen side, obviously because my queen side is. But this is a good illustration of why, in this variation, after you play h3 and d4, you generally don't want to castle on the king side, because then again you give black the opportunity to play f5, and when both kings are on the king side, it again brings it into that sort of double-edged sword that kings and king players. I think my idea, that's a good question. So in a lot of these positions, you don't need to castle, except for that you want to connect your rooks together. Like you want to bring one rook to the other side of the board. So for example, like in these past games that we looked at, white doesn't really need to castle here either. But the reason why white castles is to bring this rook. That's sort of why I castle. Again, my king is perfectly safe in the center too, but the reason I castle here is because black is threatening b4, and I want to be able to protect it. But yeah, if not for wanting to move this rook to c1, I mean, I think in this position, I was even thinking that. Yeah, then d4 and the idea here is c4. And this might have been okay. Yeah. I mean, the king will probably be weaker here. But king e2 is also playable. In this game, I decided to cancel. After f5, after that, my king out of the open file. Black did the same. After I played knight d1 to try and pick the rook back out. Because black wants to play bishop a4 here. So if I play knight d1, if black just plays rook a4 here, then he's a so my opponent instead played d3, attacking my rook. And here I don't play knight c2 right away because then so I play queen e2 to pick up the pawn. Promoted, bishop takes c1, bishop h4. Here I wanted to actually bring my knight to f3 eventually. So yeah, I started setting up for the next game. Knight b1. This is actually a mistake, I think, because you'll see in the game it allows black too much time to double on the f file and bring this h3 pawn, which is what happens in the game. So I play knight b1. After rook f8, bishop e3, queen f6. So here black makes two threats, right? One threat is queen f3, and then pick up this h3 pawn, and the other is just I can only defend against one of those, so I'm going to lose the pawn. So rook e2, queen f3, and after the train, I play queen e2, and black won a pawn back. So it got a little bit messier in the end than it needed to if I hadn't played knight d1. But this endgame is also winning for me eventually, and it helps that didn't play this as well as me. In this position, what's the best move? Not an obvious winning tactic. Bishop d5. Then I think. What is it? E6? E6. Yeah, knight d6. You take more of a threat. And black takes 4. So after knight d6, my opponent played h5. Here I can just take, because again, my opponent can't take. My opponent. Yeah, my opponent resigned after that. So again, this is sort of an illustration. When you play h3 and g4, prevent black from playing f5, you prevent black from going about their normal king's Indian plan. They're forced to do something completely different to what they're used to, and they're more likely to make it's 7:20 already, so I think since Nick didn't talk about c5 at all in the king's Indian, we'll go to a couple of puzzles actually, in from King's Indian games. This is the first one. It should be this one should be the easiest. I'll give you. This one I actually just set up. And what's the idea? Yeah, exactly. So 6. You're bringing mate here. And if black tries to run away, then you just have to. You're going to take on g7 next turn. Let's try this one. This is actually from a. This is from a line that I prepared for the watching the state championship. And unfortunately, my opponent did not. It's a nice finish. Queen h6 is not the most accurate move in the book. At the very beginning. Rook takes, takes, run. Yeah, I think black is running away. Rook takes. Queen h6 right away. Rook. Takes h7. I heard. Okay, one at a time. So somebody said bishop takes h7 after queen h6. So here black is also. What was the other suggestion? Rook where? E6. E6. Okay. On H7. Bishop F5. Actually, an interesting idea. I know it doesn't work. I can't tell you why it doesn't work. I mean, I could probably play Bishop H. Oh, I can just take this. What was the other suggestion? Knight E4. Okay. Queen. And like pass servers again. Queen E. Rook where? Queen H6. Rook H6. Well, that's because I'm covering up. Okay, I'll give you a hint. Bishop H7 is the right first. Knight takes H7. Okay, rook takes G7, king takes G7. Queen H6. If black goes back, then we take rook 8. So king F7. We're on the right track here. Queen G6. Yeah, it could be easy from here. King E7, this is made. King E7, this is also made. And if rook F7, after bishop takes, what if king F7? Black just runs it. Sorry, what was that? Rook takes G7. Okay, that's it. So that one was slightly more difficult, but you guys got it. So to review, the main idea of this variation against the King's Indian, you don't want to play the main line bishop e2 and let black get into what they're comfortable in. You just play h3 with the idea of playing d4 to prevent f5. You force black to play on the queen side, which they aren't typically familiar with. So black will be more likely to make a mistake that you can take advantage of. And your plan is very simple. You pass a queen side. And you throw your pawns down the board on the king side. Thanks, Evan. Also, I will say, just quickly as like a organizational thing, we don't have the room next door every other Tuesday until 7:30. So we'll have this room from 6 to 7:30 every other Tuesday. So if you guys have any ideas for things that you want to do in this room, or lectures you want to hear, or lectures that you want to give, then just message one of the officers or talk to us. For now, the plan is like every other Tuesday, but we can also do anything else in this area. Every other Thursday. I don't know. I assume it does. Rare defensive. Mr. Defense.